Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's of PTC Nordic Talks webinar, where we are honored today by having Mikael Ekström from TietoEvry here for a bit different session today on how to make use of IoT in beehives. But first, a very quick introduction about myself. So first, for those who don't know me from the past, and my name is Torbjörn Pihlsson, and I'm the Alliance Manager for PTC in the Nordics, and we have been running those webinars every week on Fridays during the lunch and inviting customers and partners for some inspiration on digital transformation to see what is possible and how to make things happen. And all the past webinars have also been recorded and also be found on the registration site. The agenda for today is first a very quick overview of PTC by my colleague Carl from the customer success team, and then Mikael will start by introducing himself and touch base on a few challenges, how to address these, and then explain some of the outcomes. And at the end, we will also have, of course, a Q&A session, so please keep your questions to the end. Over to you, Carl.
Yes, thank you, Torbjörn. So thank you. PTC is an international software company with headquarters based in Boston. We are developing software mainly for the manufacturing companies since 1985. We offer tools for the digital transformations, such as CAD for design, PLM for managing data, IoT for connecting products or manufacturing operations, and augmented reality to visualize and interact with the digital thread. To you, Mikael.
Thank you very much, Carl. So this session today will be around this topic with digital beehives. And we are extremely proud that we won the 2020 CIO Awards as this year's sustainability project. And especially proud about what the jury said. They said that when the ingenuity is as its greatest, no great means are needed to make a big difference. This year's sustainability project shows that technology really can be used to create a better future. Collecting data that is translated into new knowledge about small individuals in the ecosystem can be what makes a difference for the entire planet. So with that short introduction and that we won the project, I'm just going to mention a little bit about myself and about the company I'm working for. So my name is Mikael Ekström. I work as a digitalization advisor and customer executive at TietoEvry, but in the spare time and as a big hobby, I'm also a beekeeper. Usually when I present myself, I show this one slider. I have about 35 years in the IT industry, but I also show my big hobby with the bees, as you can see in the lower part of it. I work at TietoEvry. Our new logo since January, you can see it below, look very stylistic and try to show what we are known for. But what we are talking about is creating purposeful technology that reinvents the world for good. We are one of Nordic's largest IT companies today. We are more than 24,000 employees. What we also talk and work with very much is the sustainability game plan. This is sort of some extract from our sustainability game plan. We talk about 100% use of green electricity in the data centers. We talk about 80% reduction of CO2 emissions, fair and green supply chains, and so on. And it also very much ties into reinventing the world for good that we're also working on. Myself, I'm situated at the Kalmar office, which is southeast in Sweden. You can see the map to the right lower hand corner. We have a beautiful office overseeing the large bridge over to the island Öland, where actually Torbjörn comes from originally. So he has a summer house there, I guess. So please visiting us if you want. I've also added plus beehive under the name of the TietoEvry Kalmar office. So we have a digital beehive outside our office where we also get honey from. This project started as a background, in an initiative that TietoEvry is involved in called HSB Living Lab. This is a 10-year research project outside of in Gothenburg, outside of the Chalmers University, where there will and is a lot of research on the future of living. The setting, unfortunately, I haven't translated all of this to English, but the setting is that there is a physical building on a temporary building permit, and there's about 40 students from the Chalmers University and scientists living in this house. And the house monitor everything. It's around 2,000 sensors. It's a real system with mail and post delivery and garbage collection, etc., etc. But it is really a living lab. So everything we do, everything they do is researched upon. So feel free to look up HSB Living Lab on the internet and see on all the different types of projects that we've been working on. So far, for the last 5-6 years, it's been more than 150 projects since the start. So there are some research to a value of some 60 million Swedish kronor here. There are different types of projects connected to the smart living, smart homes, energy, and also this digital beehive. We're trying to map as many of the 17 areas that United Nations has sort of set up for sustainability game plan for 2030. As I said, if you want to read more about it, please look up HSB Living Lab and you can see some of the research project that has been done. And if you want, you can also apply for doing your own research at the HSB Living Lab. It's an open arena. Last year, we had a 24-hour event where we have a live sent research, and we showed some of the projects that we've been doing. I myself and the team working with the Digital Beehive, we created a 15-minute movie about bees and why it's so important. We also put a camera inside of our Digital Beehive, so we have like a slow TV. So you could, in the breaks, we went sort of with the camera into the beehive, and you could actually see the bees looking up the camera and checking it in and so on. So feel free to connect with HSB Living Lab. Why is bee and beekeeping so interesting? Bees and beekeeping has always been important for mankind. There are even 8,000-year-old paintings showing the humans in the beginning collecting honey. There has been honey found in the graves in Egypt, for example. And there are foundings saying that there are 3,000-year-old beehives found in Israel. But what can IT really do to help these sort of small creatures that's been around for so many years? What we can see is that many companies are now creating and actually renting beehives. For example, McDonald's has created a small beehive that looks like a McDonald's restaurant. They call it the world's smallest drive-through, where the bees are flying in and out from the beehives. You can also see that a lot of companies are putting beehives on the rooftops of the buildings, or as we have done at TietoEvry, outside of our office, for example. Our marketing department think this is really fun because we have our own honey. They call it, do you want data-driven honey? We got it. So there's a lot of things you can do from a marketing point of view and show that you are helping these small creatures by renting or creating your own beehives, for example. The most common, though, is what you see to the right-hand side. These are beehives that you can see among the fields on the countryside, for example, at raps fields, the yellow fields outside in south part of Sweden. And these are helping the farmers with the pollination. About 70–80% of what we eat are dependent on pollination today. So it's no surprise that Earthwatch Institute 2019 declared the bees the most important living being on the planet. It has been said, I put the cross on top of it, that Albert Einstein said that if the bees and the insects disappear from Earth, mankind would have 4 years left to live. This cannot be proven, but there are letters saying that he is or was very much aware of the research around the bees and the problem with the bees dying and so on. Because this is the problem. It's a serious global problem. The global bees and insects dies all over the globe. There are reports saying that about 1 million of different species of insects are threatened by death and disappearing from Earth. 2020, there were 50 million bees that died in Croatia. A little bit later the same year, there were more than 4 million bees that dies in Italy, for example. So when I was at HSB Living Lab at a workshop, they suddenly said they wanted bees there. And as I'm a beekeeper, you understand that I was really, really happy. I said, of course, we should have bees here at HSB Living Lab, but then I would like these beehives to be equipped with a similar kind of sensor information, sensor system and sensor information collection that we had at HSB Living Lab. And so I sent in an application where I said, I want to set up a research project called HSB Living BeeLab. That's why we call it the BeeLab, where I digitally connect beehives and collect data into a cloud service. And I got this approved. So later, after half a year, we actually now have a digital beehive that you can see in the lower part of this picture. And it's connected through an Ethernet cable, and we are using, this was our first version, we are using it to get electricity to the beehive, but also collect the data. And we collect weight, temperature, humidity, air pressure, and so on from this beehive. And as I said, we have also had cameras in the beehive as well. And all this data is then collected into the cloud service, where we have created an app connected to the cloud service, where beekeepers then can get all the data from these beehives and actually help them to treat and also handle what's happening in the beehives in a much better way than manual inspections. You can see a manual inspection in the top left-hand corner, where you actually have to remove the frames and look at the frames and try to find the bee queen, etc., etc. So this is normal work for a beekeeper, but by digitalizing the beehive, we hope that we can help the beekeepers to handle the beehives in a much better way. But even more important, we're also collecting all the data into the cloud service, where we can see long-term trends for how the bees are, for example, being treated and also handled, and sort of connect that into the temperature changes on Earth and so on as well. The solution, the first version we started with was a Raspberry Pi. We connected the sort of the different types of sensors into that in a very rudimentary way. And then we had, as I said, this Ethernet cable, and we had a MikroTik router who could do or handle the power over Ethernet and the split between the communication and the power. And then we started to collect this data into the cloud environment. So this is how it physically looked like when we had these traditional beehives connected into our AWS service, and the different types of data that we started to collect. We also started to construct our own beehive. We didn't do it in the modern ways of beehives. We took a traditional beehive, a wooden beehive, and we made some constructions of that so that we could protect the digital equipment inside of the hive, and also that we should only measure the weight of the hives. So that's why we started with this traditional beehive called Smålandskupan. So we produced 3-4 of these at a carpentry in Oskarshamn, and they made a CAD drawing of it, and CNC produced it. So it's a very modern way of producing also the beehive, I would say. Then we got so much interest for these different beehives, so we also delivered it in some parts of Sweden, some southern parts of Sweden, like HSB Malmö. And you can see there is a black dot above the entrance into the beehive, and that was actually a camera that we put in there because they wanted the people living in this residence area to also be able to look through the app, streaming information from the bees flying in and out. Otherwise, the most common way is that we have different types of sensors, like this sensor that you see to the left, which is a unique ID about which hive it is, and then which value and which sensor it is. This was an outdoor temperature sensor. And that is being sent into the AWS environment. And in the beginning, we were using just Grafana in the AWS environment to be able to check on the different types of variations from the sensors and make some conclusions out of that. But now we're also working with the mobile app so that it will be easier for also the residents or the beekeeper to connect into the cloud service. After we done this, we sent out some press releases about it, and it was amazing. I've never seen so much. I worked 35 years in the IT industry, but I've never seen so much attention that we got from these press releases. The Swedish television wanted to record and make interviews with us. Bloomberg did an article saying Swedish researchers connect 160,000 bees to the internet. There were Twitters from the Swedish embassy in the US saying, yes, Nordic company TietoCorp has created a digital beehive with sensors that the aim is to detect outbreaks of diseases and to ensure biodiversity and so on. So there's a lot of things that happen around this. We also set up a collaboration with the Linnaeus University, where we started to study sound sensors and have sound sensors in the beehives to detect different types of deviations from the bees. They may be attacked, they may have different types of diseases, and then they sound differently. Maybe there is a queen that is hatched in the hive, so there is a swarm that is going to happen, and so on and so on. And these guys, they did this thesis study last year, and we have two new students that will do and continue these guys' work this year, actually. They even won a scholarship, 25,000 Swedish kronor for their thesis work, for example. And we're also working now with the Linnaeus University, who has an IoT lab on the generation 2 of the IoT equipment, which will be battery driven and wireless. We're looking into different types of communication protocols like narrowband, IoT, and so on. But in basic, it's the same thing. We are still sending different types of sensors data into the AWS environment. But we've also added CO2 and air quality sensors into the environment. So this is how it looks like now. We have a prototype up and running, and we're now looking at partners who could help us produce these new IoT boards and make some nice packaging of them as well. And we also discuss with different types of telecom operators if they want to be part of this project and help us with the SIM cards, for example. As I mentioned as well, we started to create an app because we know that the beekeepers usually in the traditional way are recording what's happening in the beehives by manually writing it on paper, really. So you can see an example up to the right on this slide. And last year we had a student who made his thesis on a digital logbook for a digital beehive. So he started to investigate what kind of information the beekeepers would like to have in such a logbook. And now we are going to launch this as a service connected to the AWS environment at the same time. So this is how it could look like. You can then manually set up as many beehives as you want, and you can manually sort of use the this app to record if you have seen the queen, if you have added frames, etc., etc. But you can also scan a QR code on the digital environment, which means that also the digital sensor data will show up in the app. depending on what kind of beehive you connect to. The good thing is that last year we applied for some funding from the Ministry of Agriculture in Sweden. And a couple of months ago, I got 600,000 Swedish kronor from them. And that means that we are now going to launch this together with the beekeeping association called Biodlarna for all their 25 districts in the whole of Sweden. So there will be beehives, digital beehives, up all the way up north in Sweden to the south of Sweden and on Gotland, the island on Gotland, etc., etc. So on all the 25 bee districts in the whole of Sweden, which means that we are now starting to create like a Google of bee data, where we collect data and can compare it from different types of areas all over Sweden. This was press released last week, and once again, there was tremendous sort of attention. So I was interviewed this Monday by the Swedish radio, 5:45 in the morning. And there has been written articles in Computer Sweden, Telecom Today, etc., etc., about this, that we now got these 600,000 from the Swedish Agriculture Ministry to roll it out and scale it up as an infrastructure sort of for beekeepers. This makes us feel very proud that we got this opportunity to scale it up, really. This is my last slide. I want to show you the picture and make you notice the picture. I love my bees, so I have some photographic equipment, meaning that I'm on the ground outside in my garden, lying there trying to make photos of all my bees collecting nectar and pollen. In this picture, you can see a working bee collecting both pollen and nectar. Pollen is on her back legs, where they have like pockets where they collect sort of big lumps of pollen. You can see the yellow lump here on her left side and on the right hand side. You can also see that she has just put out her tongue or snabel to actually deep down into the flower to suck in the nectar from this flower. So I'm really happy that I got this picture, because I think these small creatures are so amazing, really. If you want to contact me, you have my contact information up there at TietoEvry. You can also look into HSB Living Lab and the research. Or we have also started to create a separate BeeLab website. And feel free to contact me if you want to participate in any way, or if you got some sort of potential beehives that you want to put out on the roof or outside of your companies and so on. That was my last slide, Carl and Tobbe.
Thanks a lot, Mikael, for sharing this very, unique case. So actually, now over to you in the audience, for any kind of questions you might have. So please go ahead and ask Mikael.
I think there's a hand raised.
Yeah, would like to speak up. Please go ahead. Otherwise, I could go first, actually. I had one question here, and then let's take the others. What is it that, technology companies like us, could learn actually from the bees?
I think the bees, we have to use our technology in combination with what's happening on the earth today. I think this is a perfect example where technology and sustainability and earth can help each other, because we don't really know why the bees are dying. And with the help of technology and technology companies, we can put these different types of sensors out. It can be bees, it can be other kind of insects, it can be other kind of animals, I think, and actually start collecting data and start understanding what's happening out there. That will give us big data information, and perhaps we can set up kind of AI functionality and so on that gives us warnings what's happening on the earth today. So I think this is just a good example where technology can do something good for the mankind and for the whole environment, the whole planet, really. If
Right.
that's an answer to
Sure.
your question, Tobbe.
Good answer, thanks. I think we had a question also from Jay. So I thought you raised your hand earlier. So Jay, would you like me to ask you a question?
I don't know. No, that's by mistake. I have a question. Thanks.
All right. Okay. Anyone else having any other questions? Please go ahead.
I think what I can say also that it doesn't need to be very complicated. We started with Raspberry Pis and just different types of sensors. Now we're working on the second generation, but I'm sure you can come up with all different kinds of ideas where you can start collecting data and start working on it so that it start becoming important for you or for your environment or for your companies and so on. I think we just scratched the surface of what these kinds of technology can be used for. Right.
Yeah. We have one question from Richard.
Hey, Rich here from Tesco. I wanted to ask you how applicable is this kind of approach to urban locations and urban rooftops of commercial buildings, such as I could imagine depots, for example. Yeah. Just wondered what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is that the city planners and so on have started to understand that they need more green areas inside of cities as well. The sad thing is that the professional farmers today, they are making their fields more single crops and so on. So actually, bees and beekeepers and so on are more and more putting beehives inside of cities today because they get more diversity of flowers for the full year and so on, compared to actually the more professional farmers on the countrysides. The farmers on the countryside have to start rethinking and leave areas where there will be a multi flowers and multicultures and so on as well. So I think we are helping each other here, the cities and the countrysides. The countryside have sort of have become more and more industrialized, I would say, with bigger and bigger fields and single crops and so on. And that's not really good for the bees and the insects and so on. They are declining. They don't have enough food, and they only have food for 3 weeks, and then it disappears for them, for example.
So having a good relationship with upstream suppliers who support kind of fallow fields and good hedgerows and all of that kind of stuff is important, right?
Yeah. And you can see, I was in London a couple of years ago, and I was at the one hotel here, very close to Hyde Park, and they had about 8 or 10 beehives on the top of the roof at their building, and they have their own honey inside and so on. At the same time, they're helping with pollinations and so on. So I think the cities are working more and more on the green areas and what's important for the bees and the beehives and the insects and so on, looking into what kind of flowers or trees they should plant, making it a good environment or better and better environment also for the insects. We actually have to take that knowledge and then go back also to the farmers and the countryside and make similar kinds of things there from the industrialization that they have sort of done for the last 50 years. So
yeah, thank you, Michael. Great. Yep. Thank you.
I had one last question here also. I mean, what's your vision about beehives? For the future, Mikael. How do you see a beehive? 10 years from now. How could you utilize new technology even further? I think
there's different areas here when it comes to bees and beekeeping. For example, in the US, a lot of almond sort of plants and so on. they take big traders coming in there with beehives to help the farmers of these almond trees to help them pollinate, for example. But I think also you have hobby beekeepers like myself who maybe not work as industrialized with beekeeping. We have it more like a hobby. We have it like, and we are thinking much more about sort of the environment and the sustainability around it. I think the ones that work on the more industrialized part of bees and beekeeping, they will have like big lorries and traders, and they will have more automation. They will have a lot of industry way of working with beekeeping. So there, the answer is twofolded, I would say, Tobbe. The ones working with it from a professional point of view, they may have thousands or 50,000 of beehives, and they move them around to different areas and so on, and work perhaps mainly on pollination and help with that. While you have the hobby ones, like myself, who have 7 beehives, for example.
Thanks. Friends, time is unfortunately running out, always going so fast. So many thanks everyone for joining this session. Very interesting, I found it a little bit unique. So special thanks, of course, to you, Mikael, for sharing a lot of, great information in this very, very, important topic, I think. How we could utilize, technology in a very important, area, of course. So stay tuned for the next week. You're having the Nordic Talks coming up already on Friday next week. So with that, I wish you a fantastic weekend and a lot of sun, I hope. Bye-bye, everyone.